And welcome back to the only live Monday through Friday lacrosse talk show. It is Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. This is Daily Dive. That is a returning friend of the show, Steve Bermel. I don't think we've talked to Steve since the preseason. How you been?
Yeah, it's been a while. We haven't connected since the off season after the championship, and I had to give you grief about Dane because you were kind of riding him on his legacy, and then he finally won one. So that was
So
quite a
good.
while ago. Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Great job on the call, even though the Bandits did lose their last game. It's nice hearing you and John Gerler. That's a fun crew you guys got over there.
Yeah, we're a good team, and John's been in the industry so long. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know. So it's real fun working with him, and having Dave between the benches is awesome too.
He's amazing. How's it been being on the CW channels? I know that's been a big deal this year for Buffalo.
Yeah, it's been really cool. Some of my coworkers at my full-time job are watching, and they may not have previously tuned in. And we've changed our approach a little bit. We've always had the unique aspect of broadcasting because we're simulcast on the radio. So especially for me with color, I have to paint a little bit of a different picture if there's a replay because some of our audience may not be able to see it. But now with picking up CW23 or with CW23 picking up our games, you might have noticed some more explanations on some procedural calls and some, a lot of the technical violations. We try to give a little bit more insight because we realize someone at home, they may not have been looking for it, but they found it. And we want to make sure that we're able to educate people who might be watching their first game. It's opened up a whole new, avenue to connect with people in Buffalo.
I like that you guys have made the adjustment. That's commendable. It's also good for the casual lacrosse fans or just new lacrosse fans, like you said. Um, let's get into those Buffalo Bandits who fall to 3-3. And I don't know if there's a reason why Buffalo. I've heard about the back end a few times, but really, and I was thinking about maybe Josh and Dane are doing too much right now, considering they're 40, and the next guy's got 20. What is your take on the 3-3 Bandits? Again, we've had a great schedule as well, but it's like, it's not where you want to be.
I think it's just been consistency. It's so cliche about 60 minutes, but if you look at these last 2 weeks, against Rochester, they didn't score in the third quarter. It was 10-10 at the half. They didn't play well defensively in the first half. Then they go on a 5-goal run in the fourth, and they seal it away, and Matt Vince absolutely stoned the Nighthawks in the second half. Similarly, they give up a 7-goal run. They're down, 10-3 at one point. And then they come all the way back, and
Yep.
Vince only gives up a couple of goals in the entire second half, and they come all the way back to tie it at 13. And I think what Coach Tavares said after the game was maybe the best synopsis, and he said it very maybe tongue in cheek. We played a great 30 minutes tonight, and for 30 minutes they controlled every aspect of that game, which is why I have a hard time pinning it on, oh, Dane and Josh are doing too much. Oh, defensively they haven't been good, because for stretches of time, we see the entire team play very well, and it leads to success. Unfortunately, it's a 60-minute game. So if the entire team doesn't play well for 60 minutes, they end up behind the eight ball, and they can't always overcome.
Were you surprised, because it was the 10-year anniversary of the Tucker Knights, were you surprised the Bandits came out? You think it was more about the Riptide, or you think it was the fact that Bandits were once again sleepwalking?
I think that they definitely would want to play the first half differently. The Bandits would have, and if they could control all things, they'd like a few shots to fall. I don't know that it was connected to the Tucker Out lymphoma night. That's
Right.
always been great energy. But here's the other thing too, Mike. You have to remember, New York came into Buffalo at the end of 2022 and did the same thing, right? They were, in the bottom of the standings, and the Bandits were cruising on their way to the playoffs. And I want to say New York won 15-9 in a game that Buffalo never even felt like they were a part of. So honestly, it could be more with this last game of a matchup thing. Maybe the Riptide are just a bad matchup for the Bandits, and something, not that anybody has an easy time shutting down Jeff Teat, but it could just be something that the Riptide do that makes them, just a tough opponent for Buffalo.
They describe the emotions in the crowd from like the tying goal, which I forgot who did the tying goal, because I thought like,
Chase Fraser. It was
yeah,
Fraser on that swim move.
Of course it is. Right, of course it is. But Fraser does it, and then Jeff T with a diving goal. What was this? What was the vibes like in that stadium? Like, oh, good Lord.
Even for me personally, it felt like it was Buffalo's game to lose, even when they were trailing, because they were so hot. They were on such a run. And when they tied it at 13, it just kind of felt like they maybe were gassed. I mean, they gave it all they had. But when that tying goal was scored, the roof nearly blew off. From a selfish note, I would have liked Buffalo to have scored that goal a minute or two sooner, because what happens is you tie that game up with about 2 minutes to go. The next shift, Jeff Teat scores with 1:47 to play, and now you've really only got 2 possessions left if you're lucky, which is what they ended up getting. But it takes a couple of possessions to score. If you'll remember, it took them 5 or 6 possessions to get that tying goal. From the time they got it from 13 to 12, they had a few shots go wide, a couple of missed opportunities, and I'm sure they were glad to tie it. But if I could have selfishly had them tie it 2 minutes earlier on the game clock, it just feels like they would have won that game because all the momentum was in their court.
Agree. It's almost like when the 2 minutes of the game comes, like it slows down dramatically. It's just kind of like you lose momentum anyways. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I have to ask you about you. I think it was you who made the comment. Well, that like you had heard John Tavares say that Dane's almost like passing too much, even though he's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Explain that to us. I think you're the one who said that.
I was not, but I'm all over it. He wanted Dane to be a little more selfish. I mean, Dane is on pace to get like 300 assists this year. Okay, not literally, but he's on pace to get well over 100 assists. Forget 100 points. And for a while, he wasn't shooting the ball well. And there was an adjustment, like the Bandits kind of had Byrne take over the top of the power play, which is usually the shooter spot, which I think is the right move because Byrne was shooting the ball better. But then what happens is Dane maybe loses confidence, or is, because he wasn't scoring, was passing even more than normal. And Tavares, he's one of the greatest players in the world. He wants him to sometimes take that shot, be selfish, go to the net, right? Instead of making a move and dishing it off to the other side, make a move and drive the net and see if you can finish. So, Tavares wants him to be selfish in a good way because he's got the talent to do so. Although, just to be the advocate, you can't blame him for passing the ball to guys like Josh Byrne because, they've shown they can score, and he's racking up the assist numbers. He's filled that bucket up to overflowing with the number of assists he's had so far.
1,000%. I'll put it this way. Even though we just harped on the Bandits, I will look towards the future now as we move on. Buffalo Bandits play the Toronto Rock in Hamilton this Saturday at 7 Eastern. Now, I believe the Bandits are 9-4 in their last 13 games against the Rock, and 3 of those losses are on the road. I mean, 9-4 is still a great record. How do you see this game playing out? What do the Bandits need to specifically work on? Because there's also rumblings that maybe Tom Schreiber might come back. Maybe he'll stay another week. We'll see. What is your take on this game?
Yeah, well, starting with Schreiber kind of working in reverse order. He participated in practice last week. I believe that was Pat Gregoire that reported that. So it was surprising that he wasn't activated last week. And obviously he's such a dangerous weapon. But, the Bandits, it could go one of two ways, and not even to be, just like slanted towards Buffalo. The last time they played these guys, they ran them out of the building twice in a row. And my fear for Toronto is they're running into an angry Bandits team, a team that felt like they let one slip away last week. And we saw what happened last year when they fired up the steamroller in the postseason. I mean, other than game 2 that they lost in Denver, they ran teams over. And you still see glimpses of that. I mean, they ran over New York for 30 minutes. They ran over Rochester in that fourth quarter. And they have the ability. They're a championship caliber team. They have the ability to get hot like that. And if they come into Toronto, Hamilton, and they have this expectation that they need to play for 60 minutes, they don't want to fall to 3 and 4. You talk about the key. It's so cliche. They can't start the way that they started against New York. And if they don't, if Vince starts off playing the entire game the way he played the second half last week, I mean, your chances to win are great right then and there.
They're almost impossible to beat at that point. So with the Rock game, which do you think, let's say Tom Schreiber does play, just for the sake of argument, Mark Matthews has been scoring the ball very well this year. What player do you like to focus on for the Bandits to stop the most in that game, you think?
It has to be Corey Small lately. He's been hotter than a pistol, and he's a great guy. And I talk to him and his wife all the time. And the Bandits know him well, and he definitely seems to have some success against Buffalo. But the added dynamic for me from Schreiber, you know where Corey Small is going to score from. You know how Mark Matthews is going to play. Schreiber feels like he can kind of score from anywhere, right? We see Schreiber run across the restraining line and from the wrong side pick a corner. And not that Matthews or Small couldn't do that, but Schreiber feels like a bigger threat from a bigger area. in the offensive zone. When it comes to stopping some guys, I don't want to call them one-dimensional, but you know what I mean. You kind of know their MO, you know the way to take away what they want to do. With Schreiber, if you take away one thing, he's got 3 others, and he'll just beat you with one of those. He's such a valuable tool anywhere in the offensive zone.
I mean, it's versatile. I mean, it's like you talk about guys who are one-dimensional. Dirk Nowitzki had one shot. It seemed like his entire career scored 30,000 points. Not a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, they asked Kobe why Dirk was so hard to stop, and he goes, "He's a 7-footer that can shoot." That's all he said.
True.
So true.
Kevin Durant was saying.
Yeah.
So March the 12th, I believe, is a trade deadline. So it's kind of coming up in a few weeks or so, about a month.
Yeah.
I'll put it this way. I'll throw you a layup here. Does Buffalo need anything? Because I noticed their face-offs are down, and I noticed also Steve Bermel is 35 years old, leading the team in block shots, which I'm sure does not help him long term at 35 years old. What do you see happening in the league, or just with Buffalo in general, with the trade deadline?
You teed it up for me to be controversial, Mike. I'm not a face-offs matter guy. I think they can matter, especially when you go on a scoring run. But I was in the building when the Bandits purposely lost every face-off to Philadelphia and beat them like 18-6. They would false start against Jeff Snyder, and they would, it would force the referee to touch the ball because that was before it was live right away. So what they would do is they'd have 4 defenders behind the restraining line. The face-off guy goes early, referee picks up the ball, hands it to Jeff Snyder. They had 5 playing D, and they won by like 12 goals. And the San Diego game, Baptiste won 18 out of 21 faceoffs. The Bandits won by 3. I mean, I certainly think there's times, especially on a scoring run, when getting another possession can be helpful. I'm not saying they don't matter at all, but I'm not a big faceoffs matter guy. I think that it's what happens off the faceoff that matters more. So I'm not that way. And I think for Buffalo, Mike, we always have to think that Dietrich's looking for big defensemen. Losing Bomberry kills them for what they want to do on defense. They want big guys on defense. They want strong guys on defense. Now we have to see. There's a possibility Bomberry comes back. Frank Brown should be coming back at some point this year as well. He's added back to the roster, just has to get healthy. So I know that if I know anything about Bandits GM Steve Dietrich, he wants size on defense. And they certainly are lacking that a little bit right now. I mean, Cam Wires is a long, lanky kid, but he likes the guys that are basically tanks. He wants big, strong, solid defenders back there. And right now they might be lacking that. So I think that's the direction they'd be looking, if anywhere, in the trade market. But I think by March 12th, a lot can change with the roster between now and then with guys getting healthy.
I love the point you mentioned about guys getting healthy. Also, Priolo, I thought did pretty good on Jeff Teat for most of that game.
Yeah.
35 years old. He looked good.
Yeah, he's so fundamentally sound. And the other thing, Mike, he's a great athlete. Like, I may have said this on the show before, but during COVID, they were timing their miles, run a mile and time it, and just to stay in shape. And he was the fastest guy. His mile was like, it was some silly time, like 7 minutes or 6. I don't know. I mean, he was consistently punching in with the fastest mile. Just to be clear, I ran 0 miles. I was last place. I was not asked to run, but I wouldn't, the only place I run is to the fridge for a snack during a commercial
Amen.
break. But he's an incredible athlete. He takes great care of himself. So he's a young 35, in my opinion. You see it. I mean, you see how good he is in transition, how fast he can still run. And, we had the stat on the broadcast that he's the #1 defender in the league in goals against when he's in the shooting lane. So there were 56 shots taken with Priolo in the shooting lane, and 48 of them didn't go in. So in other words, if you shoot with Priolo in front of you, you've got a 15% chance of it going in, because he's going to alter your shot or give Vince the look that he wants to make sure the shot's coming from the spot. So when you mention what he did on Teat was 3 for 3 on his first 3 shots, but for the most part, you're right, he did shut him down, especially in the second half.
Supposedly they played a good 30 minutes, like John Tavares said.
Yep.
So bad. Upcoming schedule for the Bandits, how's it looking? I mean, I know I think a pissed off Bandits team is a good thing against the Rock, but after that, how are we feeling?
I honestly think it hinges on this next game because of the way that the standings are looking right now. They come back home the weekend after that. It might be Rochester. I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, but this is kind of a big moment for them in the schedule, because this is the difference between 4-3 and 3-4. This is a team that you hope to be neck and neck with come the end of the year in the unified standings. This is a team that you would love to have the tiebreaker against. Before this past week, the advantage Buffalo had is they had the tiebreakers against Rochester and San Diego, whom they shared a record with. So, if you're hoping to be in the top of the standings at the end of the year, it's going to be Toronto up there, and you want to be, you want to have that tiebreaker against them.
Rochester, Halifax, and Albany. So out of the next 4 games, realistically, how you think 3-1 is attainable?
Yeah, I think so. Especially because they, if we talked about it, if they come out big against Toronto, coming home to Rochester, they're such a good team for 3-3, and that sounds so biased, but you've seen it. You have seen it. It's not, they're not getting blown out by 8 goals and just not showing up for a night, and you're like, oh, they're still a good team. No, they've played near perfect lacrosse for 15 and 25 and 30-minute stretches of games. And when they do that, look at what they did to Colorado when they played perfect lacrosse for 60 minutes. They won 13-4 in a championship game 3. So it's there, and the roster is still the same. They know how to win. I think 3-1 is a good number. Maybe the loss comes to Albany, but they're going to owe them one too. So, and we'll have to see how Dougie is feeling health-wise. Dougie Jameson went down last game injured, and we don't really have an update. I haven't seen an update on how he's doing.
They say it was minor, but I mean that could mean 2 or 3 weeks. We don't know.
Well, that's even more than I heard. So you're in the know more than me with the minor injury. That's good to hear. Dougie's a good guy. Heard
on the broadcast. That wasn't my fault. Okay, but Steve Bermel, we appreciate you per usual as always. You were awesome. Tell John that we send our awesomeness to him, and you enjoy the next game that you broadcast, sir.
All right. Thanks very much, Mike. Take care.